Hey there, Frank here, submitting my first assignment on Module 1. My thoughts really didn't fit that well into a Venn diagram or circle diagram, so I'm going to do a little bit of live sketching to kind of dissect what I think about the green morass. So let's give this a try. So basically, we're discussing these systems that are in place around sustainability, green infrastructure, and generally a lot of buzzwords that we're calling this murky area known as the green morass. So the way that looks to me is something that emulates more of a natural system that's been hijacked. So the way I'd like to describe it is kind of in the ways of the water cycle. So we have a major cloud up at the top that starts the process. And up in the cloud, we have all the important things that we discuss and sometimes get used for personal benefit, like environment, design, engineering, planning, economics. These are some of the large systems at play that are then these very complex and create some homogeneous results. So obviously, uniform codes is going to have quite a few cracks in it. So not only is it not wide enough or comprehensive enough to ever catch anything that could be precipitating from these large factors, but it's not solid enough to contain it. So it will continue to have holes. It's those holes that create these other systems that we've talked about. So in response to holes in the uniform code standards, it spawned LEED. So LEED does its best job at catching what uniform codes fails to collect. But it too has its own flaws and cracks. So it too will leak. From there, things start to change and get a little bit better, and you get introduced to something like well. And sites, which try a little bit better at catching the residual outflow, but they're still just a set of standards, so they're never quite wide enough, comprehensive enough, or considering all the important things that come from urban living. So along this matrix, we're going from, in my opinion, something that's relatively natural, and it's getting filtered in this area through something that's been imposed by man. So this is a man-made intervention. So as you go through this intervention, the inputs and desires change to where the uniform codes are set up and lead in ways that help catch money. Well, and sites start recognizing that, so they try and invest in more care. So they're actually more concerned with our positive environment, even if they do get specifically siloed, but their motivations get a little bit better. But as everything actually filters down to the bottom, you end up with just this natural pool where the most natural systems are emulated. So that's where your biophilia lives. It's where biomimicry lives. It's where that designing for an evolving human that Robert Fleming talked about fits in. And that's partially informed by environmental psychology, which pretty much supports his tenets on what people do and do not enjoy as a living creature. And these are where things start to get really holistic. A well-rounded approach to addressing the initial concerns. So we've created this whole system in the middle to help us navigate and hijack, for specific reasons, either education or design or the environment. And I think what I'm learning is that by skipping all that and taking some of that control back, it might be better. So that brings us to the idea of schools, and how do these ideas and structures work when we're talking about our beloved schoolhouses. Which are subject to these tiny people who have to learn about space and the environment, and we're the ones deciding how they're going to do that. And I think that this man-made intervention of codes, LEED, well, and just the cultural idea of suing everyone and over safety, so much propagation of fear, has influenced the design of schools. I think it's been hijacked by these man-made interventions, and they currently operate and are designed more like prisons. Large squares, a lot of fencing, so much security and privacy concerns, metal detectors even. It's just getting so crazy that schools don't really even look like the typical schoolhouse anymore. They all look like these big concrete monoliths with bars on the windows, and everything's just about program, and there's not much being done to create this holistic environment. I was actually surprised and proud to learn that Denver was #1 in its agricultural approach to schools. But that led me to the thought that why don't our schools operate from a fundamental level way more like a farm? To me, the farm aspect starts to really address some of the flaws in the community holes that schools are seeking to provide. It's teaching children constantly. The farmer is a scientist. He's constantly observing. He's constantly learning, or she. And just the idea of using that as a framework to begin to approach a school design as not just a place to ship your kids for a sentence of 8 to 9 hours a day, and more like where it's operating more like a daycare, and start using it more like a community resource where families become involved, the neighborhood becomes centered around the agriculture that could be produced at a school, and addressing all the concerns of well-being, physical activity, and the other things that structures like LEED and green schools attempt to do, but really miss the mark in so many ways. So really that begs the question to me is, it brings up the idea of the word control. And I'm not sure if it means we need less of that or more. But I think it's something that could definitely warrant some consideration. And so ultimately where I'm at is I've developed a question, a central question that I'd like to explore this semester, and especially through the lens of this agricultural farm approach to school design. But how can we emulate a natural system in a way that we can create more cultural value on a community level, to by combining or condensing education and design as a whole. Or considering education and design together, and how they can constantly influence each other. And the lack of consideration in the current state of schools, I think, is pretty appalling. So I'm just going to make the camera maybe get a better view of all this stuff. So it's working. But basically, this idea, and I can upload this image in a PDF as well, but that's what I came up with, so I hope that fulfills what you expected of where we're at, and looking forward to learning a whole lot more. Thanks.